This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. Underwear drawers are like the Wild West. You never know what you're going to pull out or what shape it's in. So upgrade your collection with the buttery soft comfort of MeUndies. MeUndies' signature fabric is as soft as a warm hug from your favorite sweater. Plus, it's breathable and oh so comfy, making it ideal for all-day wear. Get 20% off your first order, plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/Spotify with code SPOTIFY. That's MeUndies.com/Spotify. Code SPOTIFY.
We
are
Cultivate.
cultivate.
We are Cultivate.
Hello and welcome to Ye Olde Crime, where we discuss the funny, strange, and obscure crimes of yesteryear. I'm your host, Lindsay Valenti, and with me is my sister and co-host, Maddie Stengel.
Hello.
Well, hello there.
Hey there, hi there.
Ho there, whoa there? I don't know what the rest of that is.
Sure.
Sure, whatever. That works.
Felt right.
It did. Because we recorded the last episode in like mid-January, I forgot to acknowledge our Buy Me a Coffee sustainers. So that's on me. That's on me. So now I am acknowledging our Buy Me a Coffee sustainers.
That's on me. You know?
That's on me. I am taking that on.
You know?
So special thank you to Charlie, Elizabeth, Sarah, and Cheryl for being monthly supporters on Buy Me a Coffee. If you would like to join their ranks and do either a one-time or monthly donation to the Ye Olde Crime cause, you can go to buymeacoffee.com, Ye Olde Crime Podcast, and it is all spelled out, one word.
Nice.
And I missed the first two public sale for the month, but there is a second one, and it is the 17th through the 23rd. So if you would like to purchase some Ye Olde Crime merch, there's a sale February 17th through the 23rd, and there is a link to our shop in the show notes.
Nice.
Speaking of show notes, let's talk about what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
So we are going to be doing some paranormal stuff today.
What? We haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah, we are overdue. I thought we were overdue. So
Yeah.
I will be sharing with you tales of the Rideau.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get there. Information was pulled from the following sources: a 2024 Arlene Stafford Wilson blog post, 2024 This is Canadiana post by Ashley Brooke, 2018 Carleton University Master of Arts in Canadian Studies thesis by Casey Gray, 2016 Linda Sacaspina blog post, I know I butchered that and I'm sorry, 2015 Au Della du Paysage, I messed that up too, blog post by Vanessa, I'm sorry, the Historical Society of Ottawa blog posts, Parks Canada YouTube video, Rideau Canal info site by Ken Watson, a Scholastic Canada book, Southeastern Ontario article, UNESCO World Heritage Convention listing, and 2 Wikipedia links.
Wow. When I heard the name and then started hearing a bunch of Canadian things, it took a turn for me. It was a pivot I wasn't expecting.
Pivot! Thank you so much to Carrie Ann for her research assistance for this episode, and links to all of these articles will be included in the show notes. If you love the show, the best way to support us is to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Good Pods, CastBox, Podcast Addict, and or Audible. Links to all of these are in our show notes, or if you're already listening on one of these platforms, you know what to do.
Oh, and while you're at it, shoot us a question you'd like to hear us answer on the pod. We'll give you a special shout out and address your burning questions all at the same time. The weirder, the better. Submit them via link in our show notes or shoot them to us in our DMs.
So this week's tale is a collection of stories surrounding the Rideau Canal, varying from true crime to the paranormal. So it's kind of a mixed bag.
All right.
Located in southeastern Ontario, the Rideau Canal, named for the Rideau River, is French for curtain, after the curtain-esque appearance of Rideau Falls on the Ottawa River.
Pretty.
Mm-hmm. This 202-kilometer or 126-mile-long canal, which starts at the Ottawa River, contains 47 locks that raise boats 83 meters all the way along the Rideau River to Rideau Lakes, where it drops 50 meters along the Cataraqui River to Kingston, and it ends at Lake Ontario. So it's a pretty long, winding canal. The canal, which was designed by architect Lieutenant Colonel John By in 1826, was opened in 1832 for commercial shipping. Following the War of 1812, the canal was built in an effort to safely transport goods without having to travel along the Canadian and American border.
Had to be sneaky.
Because fighting. The project had been championed by Charles Lennox, the 4th Duke of Richmond, who in turn convinced the Duke of Wellington that its construction was necessary to defend Canada against the Americans.
Did he agree?
He did agree.
Wellington agreed.
4 blockhouses were built along the length of the canal to provide protection for the British forces. There is the Merrickville Blockhouse, Kingston Mills Blockhouse, Newborough Blockhouse, and the Rideau Narrows Blockhouse. And they were essentially like, you would store like munitions there, and it would also act as sort of like a mini military base.
Okay. I was going to be like, what's a blockhouse? Is it like a safe house kind of a thing? Is it?
It literally looks like a house built on blocks. It's very square. But yeah, there'd be like military munitions on site. And then like above it would be sort of like a living quarters for the officers that are stationed at the blockhouse.
Huh. All right.
It took 6 years to finalize the construction of the canal, and during that time, 1,000 laborers perished as a result of dangerous working conditions.
Yeah, I can't imagine how harrowing it would be making a canal.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just going against man-made tools, but like currents and stuff. Like
nature.
Nature's. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Going against water like that. Like, no. No.
The bulk of the construction was completed by French-Canadian laborers, and there were also some Irish and Scottish laborers mixed in there, but it was mostly French-Canadians.
I wonder how many of the Scottish and Irish ones were actually there on purpose.
Blastings and cave-ins weren't the only cause of death. In fact, malaria was estimated to have taken the lives of up to 500 workers.
That makes sense. Malaria is really nasty. Like, there's a reason why we have vaccines against it, man.
Mm-hmm. It's believed that the bodies of several of the laborers who perished throughout the construction of the canal are buried in several places along its route.
That makes
Accidental
sense.
Deaths were pretty rare, with only 7 noted in 1827.
That's crazy.
So that's more like construction-based accidents.
Yeah.
Not illness-based deaths. Those who died were buried in local cemeteries, such as Chaffee Cemetery, the Royal Sappers and Miners Cemetery, and McGuigan Cemetery. Guess how much this cost?
A lot of money. I want to say like $1 billion today.
Very close. So all told, the construction of the canal would cost the Crown £822,804, or 78 million pounds today.
Because what did you say? It was like 122 miles or something
126 miles or 202 kilometers. Yeah, it was long. It's long.
Yeah, that's a lot of just ground to cover.
Yeah, so Lieutenant Colonel John By, who spearheaded the project, he had to go to England and answer for the cost. Like, they were like, why the fuck did this cost so much? And he was like, what?
He's like, what? It was a lot.
He's like, why are you mad?
Yeah, like, you're safe now while you travel. You're welcome.
It's like, you should be like happy that I did this.
Yeah. We had malaria for you guys. Like,
yeah.
Can you
a lot of people died from malaria. One of the oldest buildings associated with the canal is the Commissariat Building, which is now home to the Bytown Museum, which is what Ottawa used to be called, Bytown. I don't know.
That's dumb.
Built in 1827, it was originally a storehouse and offices for food and munitions for the British military. So kind of like a blockhouse.
Yeah.
Located at the lower locks of the canal, it is the oldest still standing stone building in Ottawa.
That's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was really well made and proved its worth.
Yep.
British crown.
Yep.
It's still standing, so I would say that almost $1 billion was worth it.
Yep. Yeah. No cut corners there.
No. Money well spent.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The Bytown Museum, which has been part of the Commissariat Building since 1917, is believed by many to be one of the most haunted locations in Canada.
Yeah. If it's one of the oldest buildings made of stone next to
A
moving
river.
water. Moving water, yeah. And where a bunch of people died. Because who knows when or where the malaria outbreak occurred. It could have occurred there.
So John By, who we've discussed a little bit, passed away in 1836, so just 4 years after the canal project was finalized. And
he didn't get to see it. Oh, no, he did get to see it finished.
Yeah. He got to see it for 4 years. He was like, look at this. Look what I made.
He was like, look at what I made. Look at the beautiful curtains. Have you seen the curtains?
Yeah. Have you seen the curtains? Look at all the locks. There's 47 of them. You can count them. Many believe that his spirit still lingers near the canal.
I bet.
He's like, I'm going to stick around.
His ghost is the only reason why the stone building is actually still there. He's like,
this needs to stay. I got in trouble, you guys. I got yelled at. The museum is home to several displays of antiques and artifacts that make up and celebrate Ottawa's history. The second floor is home to a collection of antique dolls. That have caused unease for a number of guests.
Yeah.
Just because they're dolls, and dolls are creepy by nature.
Who just decides that at a museum? Like, you know what we should do? Just have a room full of dolls. Like, no.
Yeah, who's like, you know what? That's a great idea. Because everyone loves dolls. Dolls are great.
It had to be at least 2 people that were like, we're doing this. And they did it. And other people went, wow, look at all those dolls.
And then they were like, wow, look at all those dolls.
Like, wow.
Many report hearing the faint sounds of children crying.
No.
And seeing the dolls blinking at them.
No, thanks.
Mm-mm.
That means the children were eaten by the dolls.
Yep.
Something bad's happening.
Other visitors have reported being pushed, grabbed, or even tripped by unseen forces, especially around the stairwell and the old money vault that is located on the property.
It's actually still Bly, just like being really protective over the remaining money.
He's like, get out of here.
We need to save every dollar. That's my money. I earned this.
We need to save every loony and toonie that is in this vault. I'm gonna cut you, bitch. Some people have even reported hearing the sound of someone shouting, get out at them.
No.
I don't like that.
No. Thanks. But like also, sure, I would love to.
I would love to. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't mind if I do.
Unsurprisingly, those who report the most experiences are the people that actually work there, the staff themselves.
Makes sense. They're exposed to it the most.
One woman noted an experience where she saw a man sitting in the library after she had closed the building for the night. And
oh, I hate that. Because even in like real life, that's so anxiety inducing.
Yeah. And after politely asking him to leave, he did so without a word. And it wasn't until she locked the door that she realized she had no recollection of seeing the man enter the library. because this is a very small building, so it would have been very hard to miss seeing him enter. Yeah. And of course, when she ran outside to see if she could find him again, he was no longer there.
Honestly, that'd be scary too, because you hear all the time about people like living in the walls, ceilings and stuff. And that I feel like an old building like that probably has those kind
nooks
of
and
like
crannies. Yeah.
spaces in between.
Yeah.
I'd be more worried about that, of like, great, there's now a wall man at my job. I don't want to close by myself anymore.
Chairman of the board of directors, a man named Glenn Shackleton, firmly believes the museum is haunted, and he has several stories to back up those claims. For example, after a meeting between him and 3 others, they closed a sliding door only to have it begin to violently vibrate as if someone was repeatedly hitting it from the other side.
What were they doing? Like, what was the meeting about? What were...
Maybe they were talking about getting rid of all the dolls.
Or maybe it was budget cuts.
Security footage showed that no one was there, and shortly after the banging stopped, loud footsteps could be heard walking away from the sliding door.
Yeah, I bet that was Bly. They said something. They did something. They were about to make a decision he did not appreciate.
Yeah.
These are my locks!
Many people, including Glenn, believe this and similar experiences are the work of a man named Duncan McNabb, who had been a supply manager during the construction of the canal. So it's either him or John. They believe it's one of the two. And I couldn't really find anything about Duncan.
Guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything about Duncan. So I don't know
must
if
be local lore of like him being curmudgeon-y or something, or maybe dying horrifically.
Something. One local legend that has taken on a life of its own revolves around a man named David Davidson, who lived on the far shore of, I didn't look up how to say this, Opinnicon Lake near Chaffee's Locks. And David lived a quiet life as a fisherman, hunter, and trapper in a cabin that he had built on the shores of the lake. And by the time the 1880s rolled around, he had become a well-known and familiar figure on the lake amongst pack peddlers who would travel around the area, like selling their wares to settlers. So think of like traveling salesmen, essentially.
Yeah.
There was a rumor that David had amassed quite a fortune that he had squirreled away in his home. And it's believed that some peddlers caught wind of this rumor and decided to check its validity for themselves.
Yeah. I feel like stuff like that's probably pretty inevitable in environments like that.
And also fairly common. We've kind of heard this type of story before.
Like, yeah, just scavengers scavenging.
Yep. David was last seen alive by his neighbor, a man named Thompson, late in November of that year. When several days had gone by with no sightings of him or smoke coming from his chimney because it's November and it's cold and there's snow, Thompson grew concerned and decided to make the trip around the lake to check on him. On the way there, he met up with another neighbor named Buck, and the pair traveled through the snow to David's cabin to further investigate. As they got closer, they quickly realized that there were no footprints in the snow other than their own, and David's dog, who was his most loyal companion, was outside by the front door.
Well, at least the dog wasn't trapped. Like, hopefully he's been able to like eat and drink and...
Yeah, they didn't say if he was like tied up outside, but he was just outside, which was unusual.
Okay. God, that'd be so scary. Ugh.
Yeah, I don't like it. Upon entering the cabin, the men were met with a gruesome sight. They discovered David's remains tied to a chair where his head had been savagely beaten and his face slashed. The room bore signs of a struggle, and upon seeing his master, the dog turned on the men and refused to let them get closer, which forced Thompson and Buck to leave. The men later returned with reinforcements, one of which being a young boy that was friendly with the dog, and he was able to...
Yeah, so he could call him out.
He was able to coax him out with some venison, because it's likely the dog hadn't eaten for quite some time.
Worried about his master.
So after they got the dog out of the house, they were able to go in and fully investigate the cabin. David's death had not been quick. His body showed signs of being beaten, burned, strangled, and his feet had even been nailed to the floor to prevent him from escaping.
That's awful. So he just died horrifically for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't sound like nobody said he was a dick.
Yeah.
And if people are looking for him, I would have to imagine that that means people liked him enough to care about him.
Mm-hmm. The entire cabin had been ransacked. The trapdoor to the attic was open. All the cupboards had been emptied. Drawers were overturned. And even the mattress had been cut open.
Yeah. This sounds like somebody trying to find treasure. Like a rumor.
A thorough investigation turned up nothing, and David's murder was never solved. He didn't have any, family in the area or anything, so...
That's so sad.
The case eventually went cold, leaving more questions than answers. Several years later, some hunters used David's abandoned cabin one evening. After boarding up the windows and covering the door with canvas, they started to notice some strange occurrences. The canvas would open and close on its own, and the door of the previously closed stove was suddenly open. None of them recalled opening the stove.
And that would have been difficult to do, because that probably would have been like wrought iron.
Cast iron or something, yep. In an effort to calm themselves down, the 6 hunters poured cups of tea for themselves, and one of them poured a 7th cup. A sudden gust of wind opened the canvas, which startled all of the men, and when they turned around, they discovered that the 7th cup was now empty, and the rest of the night was fairly quiet.
So, because they appeased him, he was going to let them stay.
After a successful hunt the following day, the men returned to Chaffee's Locks and shared their stories with an elderly man who lived there. He listened carefully before remarking, quote, "Oh, sure, that's Davy, sure enough. Funny you lads didn't see him. I've seen him plain as print a number of times. He likes a calm night with just part of the moon showing and a few clouds skittering across. But you don't have to be afraid of Davy. He won't hurt you," end quote. Even today, locals believe that on calm nights, a solitary figure can be seen in a dugout canoe on Opinnakan Lake. And to this day, it's unclear if there ever was a treasure, but the legend of Davy Davidson's ghost persists at Opinnakan Lake.
Davy Davidson.
I know. I like how they called him Davy. Oh, Davy.
That's so sad.
Yeah. What a horrible way to go.
That's just so unbelievably sad. And his poor dog too. I hope his dog went with a boy and lived happily ever after and stuff. You hear of dogs being just as affected as people.
Yeah.
Sometimes with death and
yeah. Next up is Oliver's Ferry. So, according to the legends...
This is familiar.
You're familiar with this one?
Yeah.
Okay. In the early 1800s, a man named Mr. Oliver started a ferry service at what today is known as Rideau Ferry. His raft, which was rough-hewn at that time, allowed travelers to cross from Brockville to Perth. However, he absolutely refused to ferry anyone across Rideau Lake after dark, and would instead invite travelers to stay over, and he would ferry them across at first light the next day. The thing is that these travelers would often vanish after spending a night at Mr. Oliver's. Whenever neighbors would ask what happened to them, he would always say the same thing: they left at dawn. But as the trend continued, people started to wonder if something more sinister was at play.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock.
Years later, when some of the outlying buildings on Mr. Oliver's property were torn down to make way for a bridge, human bones were discovered under the floors and inside the walls.
Yeah, I bet they found a lot.
But how much of this legend is fact and what is fiction? So the true story of Oliver's Ferry is a little bit stranger than fiction. There was, in fact, a man named Mr. Oliver, John Oliver, to be exact, not to be confused with today's John Oliver. In 1816, this Scottish immigrant who lived on the south shore of Elmsley Township started a ferry service that crossed the narrowest section of the lake, which was necessary in order to cross as the area was filled with trails that kind of wound through forests and swamps. So it was not a safe place to walk around.
Sounds like fun. And a northern swamp, nonetheless.
Yeah.
Like a cold swamp.
No thanks.
Yay.
Reverend William Bell passed through the area from Perth in 1817 and went on to note in his diary how he found John and his wife extremely hospitable, although John, quote, appeared to have a somewhat unstable personality, end quote. He noted that their son William even escorted him to a neighboring home so that he could be put up for the night. The reason the Reverend wasn't invited to stay in the Oliver home was because, as he noted, John had a troubled personality, which would lead to him completing suicide in 1821.
Oh, do you think he probably was schizophrenic or maybe had something?
I think it was maybe schizophrenia.
Or like bipolar?
Something,
Like
yeah.
Yeah, some sort. Oh.
Upon his death, his son William inherited the business, but that wasn't all he inherited. He had also developed a violent nature and was known to quarrel with his neighbors. William was also known as a womanizer that had no qualms going after other men's wives.
So at least a narcissist, at the very least.
William's aggressive personality contributed to his death on July 19th, 1842, when he confronted his neighbors, the Toomey brothers, over their cattle that had wandered onto his property.
Knowing, just going off of hockey logic, the Tooney brothers.
Toomey with an M.
Toomey?
Yeah.
Toomey brothers sound like they're 6'10", 385 pounds, and they'll just like squish you with their thumbs. Like, I don't know if I would upset brothers.
Well, the heated exchange turned deadly when William was shot in the chest after he punched one of them. The July 26, 1842 edition of the Perth Courier noted of the event, quote, on Wednesday morning, July 20th, 1842, an inquest was held upon the body before W.P. Loke Esquire, the coroner, when the jury returned a verdict of manslaughter against William and John Toomey, the evidence being contradictory as to which of the brothers had committed the deed. We understand they were sent to Brockville jail to await their trial, end quote. The brothers were jailed and both were later convicted on charges of manslaughter.
I feel like that was still relatively hard to do, so there must have been a lot of witnesses.
If they were quarreling and they were quarreling very loudly, they probably drew a crowd.
Yeah, I bet they did. Especially if he was known to being shitty with the neighbors. I bet the neighbors paid more attention.
Following William's murder, the gruesome legends surrounding his family began to take shape. It seemed to almost solidify in 1873 when a human skeleton was reportedly discovered under the platform of a house near the ferry wharf where plans were being drawn up for a bridge to be constructed. It would later be revealed that the skeleton had not been found at the ferry, but in fact some 300 kilometers away in Petawawa.
Oh, so somebody just dropped the bones there to like...
Well, I think they just like inflated the story, being like, oh yeah, they found it there, but instead it was actually like super far away.
Funny.
Next up is Watson's Mill, which is located in Manotick, Ontario. Founded in 1860 by Moss Kent Dickinson and Joseph Merrill Currier, it was originally called the Long Island Milling Enterprise and was built by Ottawa contractor Thomas Langrel. Constructed of limestone.
Ooh, oh no.
Yeah, I saw that and was like, I need to make sure that's included because
you might as well
woof.
You're building out of Ouija boards. Like, what the fuck?
Constructed of limestone that was quarried from the banks of the Rideau River.
No.
Yeah. And locally cut wood. This flour and grist mill was one of 4 milling operations built along the Rideau Canal, which included a sawmill, carding mill, and the Canada Bung Plug and Spile Factory. So I had to look it up. Bung is like, it's like the toppers for like barrels. So like
yeah. Yeah, like I figured it had to be some sort of like tool, like something that needed to be constructed.
Yep. Moss was a successful steamboat owner and nicknamed King of the Rideau due to the number of freight and passenger steamers that traverse the canal. He also purchased 30 acres of land that he went on to develop as residential lots, which led to the creation of the village of Manotick, which is Algonquin for island.
Nice.
Joseph was a lumber baron and a partner in the Victoria Foundry in Ottawa, which is where all the machinery for the mill was cast.
Okay. Wow. So like super connected and
Yeah.
like very I feel like it would be difficult to be that well known in such a large place at that time.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite expensive.
Mm-hmm. The legend surrounding the mill has to do with Anne Crosby Currier, or as she is more commonly known, Annabelle.
Hmm.
Born in 1841, Anne was the daughter of a successful hotel owner and grew up in Caldwell, New York, alongside her 7 siblings.
Dang.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know where she fell?
I don't. I didn't
Oh,
find it.
that's par for the course, I feel
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. She's a lady. No one knows.
Yeah, she's a lady. She was one of them around
She
there.
was in there somewhere.
Yeah, she's in the mix.
She married Joseph in 1861 and was 20 at the time of their marriage. She was also
Okay.
Joseph's second wife. I
Ew.
didn't look it up, how old he was at the time that they married. I probably should have. He was born in 1820, and they got married in 1861. So he was twice her age. He was 41 when they got married.
Okay, so his first wife could have been gone for a number of reasons.
Yeah. 6 weeks into their marriage, on Monday, March 11th, 1861, the couple returned from their honeymoon to take part in a small party to celebrate the first successful year of the mill's operation.
Okay, so probably a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been like months of planning.
It was during the party, as the couple made their way amongst attendees and past the moving equipment and machinery on the second floor, that Anne's crinoline and dress suddenly became caught in one of the turbine shafts.
No. She was pulled in.
She was flung against a pillar and died instantly.
Yeah. Holy shit, that would have been horrific to see.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. And that would have happened so fast.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been 2 seconds, 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay. That's so sad.
I know.
Oh my God. Okay.
Immediately following his wife's death, Joseph lost all interest in the grist mill and sold his shares of the company to Moss.
Yeah. Why would you want to
I
harm
would,
yourself?
yeah. Since then, several people have claimed to see her ghost in the mill, which was renamed after its last owner, Harry Watson. The mill exchanged hands several times over the intervening years before it was finally purchased in the 1970s by the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, who restored it to its former glory before converting it into a museum. The museum runs several events each year, capitalizing on the haunting, marking the spot as a popular paranormal destination. Today, it's the only working museum in Ottawa and one of the few industrial grist mills that is still in operation in North America.
Oh, I don't know if I like that.
In fact, it still sells stone ground whole wheat flour that is produced on site.
Wow.
Apparently they make it every Sunday, is what I saw on the website.
That's so cute. I bet they have like bread club people and everything.
Oh God, you know they do. You know that there's like a local like bread makers union or something.
Yeah.
A bread making circle.
They share each other's like mother.
Have you heard about the lady in blue? Because you're going to right now.
There are so many ladies in blue.
There's so many ladies in colors.
Yes, but I remember a lady in blue in particular for one of like the Unsolved Mysteries episodes.
Oh yeah.
So when you said that, immediately in my head it went It's like Robert Stack with smoke billowing behind him.
as he walks in front of like a
trench
light
coat.
pole.
Yeah. Yep. God, I miss Robert Stack.
I know. R.I.P. Robert Stack. In the 1860s, a woman named Kathleen McBride arrived in Burritts Rapids early on a summer day. The beautiful redhead, who was dressed in blue and only brought with her a pair of shoes, one brush, and a suitcase, grabbed a room in the hotel beside the canal bridge.
The brush, like, why isn't it in the suitcase? Why is it out of the suitcase?
Maybe it was in the suitcase. They just made a point of noting these are the things she brought with her.
I just think that's really funny. Like, I'm just expecting to see a disheveled woman with an extra pair of shoes in her hands, a brush, and like an empty suitcase. And it's like, ma'am, why aren't you putting those in the suitcase? Ma'am.
I like my suitcase.
This is so hard for you, ma'am.
You know these things are supposed to go inside the suitcase, right?
You can put them all in one and then hold it at the same time. Yeah, I'm confused.
For weeks, Kathleen would be seen traveling slowly from one tip of the canal to the other, never speaking to others, always in the same blue dress, spending all day, every day, watching the water travel the length of the canal.
Ooh, okay, that's some sort of mental illness, mental instability, maybe PTSD, coping.
Kathleen was last seen searching via moonlight on the night of October 31st. No one ever knew what she was looking for, but 2 days later, on November 2nd, a torn piece of blue satin dress was found on the banks of the canal where the new bridge crossed the river. At that point in history, the bulk of the countryside was mostly forest that was very full of wild animals, and it's unclear if Kathleen drowned or if she was attacked and killed by bears.
Yeah, they might have been hungry during that time too. If they were messing with their environment, yeah, you could have some angry bears.
Years later, legend states that on moonlit nights, you can see a red-haired woman in blue walking near the dam or near the little hill. Some people who have encountered her have even gotten close enough to feel the icy chill that she leaves in the air.
I wonder what happens if you tried talking to her.
Like, yeah, that'd be weird.
Does she acknowledge you?
Does she ignore you?
Does she tell you why she's there?
Yeah.
Like, do you get to find out?
Yeah. Does she tell you her secret? She just asks where her brush is. Where's my brush?
Grants these wishes 3.
Shoes, a brush, and an empty suitcase. Can all be yours. It's very random.
It's full of...
She's a random genie. There's a couple more random stories.
Okay.
Such as that of the Long Island lockmaster, George Clark. George was upset with the superintendent's office, specifically for their lack of maintenance funding for not just the repairs that were needed for the locks themselves, but also for areas around them that posed a problem for public safety.
Listen, Bly did so much. He tried so hard. He can't do everything, you guys. Can't,
especially from beyond the grave.
He's dead.
So in July of 1899, Superintendent Phillips arrived aboard the tug Shanley, where he met George at the wharf. As George spoke with him, he pointed out that the wooden grates that covered the manholes of the tunnel sluice were a danger to the public, and they needed to be replaced.
They were wooden?
They were wooden.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah. Annoyed with George's constant badgering for funds, because he had sent multiple letters.
Yeah, because I bet it's really scary. I bet it's super terrifying seeing, like, kids jumping on that stuff and, like, and moms with strollers and heavy things. Like, yeah, I would probably be just as irritating.
The superintendent argued, claiming that the wood was as strong as iron. And to prove his point, he proceeded to jump up and down on the grating, which gave way and plunged him into the manhole.
Oh my God. Did he die instantly?
So at the time this was happening, they were lowering the water in the lock.
Oh
So
my
there was
God.
water going through the sluice.
So it was just like a horrific death water slide at that point.
So George and several members that had been working the lock rushed to save him from the water that was being forced through the sluice, and they were finally able to get him out via a rope that they were able to throw out to him. Miraculously, Phillips was able to walk away from the incident unharmed, and George was able to get the funding that he requested without any further complaints.
Yeah. Oh my God. What the fuck?
Yeah.
It's like a Laurel and Hardy movie.
Yeah.
Like, no. I can't. That's insane.
The last story that I'm going to share with you is that of Isaiah Crouch, who in the mid 1800s lived near the village of Kilmarnock. Isaiah, it said, had the gift of foresight.
Uh-oh.
And here is the story from the book History of Leeds and Grenville. Quote, according to the testimony of his wife, who bore the reputation of being a Christian woman, Crouch would frequently retire to bed, where in vain would he seek slumber. Restless and uneasy, he would toss from side to side, at times groaning and muttering names of the departed. Do what he would to shake off the mysterious spell, in the end he was compelled to submit. Rising, he would quickly dress himself, take his canoe, and paddle across the river, where he declared he always found waiting a spectral funeral procession, which he would follow to the graveyard, where all the rites and ceremonies would be performed. Crouch, having watched the ghostly mourners fade away, would then return home, retire to rest, and sink into a profound slumber.
For like how long? Like days? That would be so scary.
Yeah.
Like that's the only way you can sleep is by astral projecting yourself outside of your body and witnessing like a 5-hour funeral? Like I don't understand. Oh my God.
It was always with the greatest difficulty that Mrs. Crouch could ever elicit from her husband the name of the party whose death had been heralded. It is related of the late Samuel Rose that upon one occasion he was in the company of Crouch. In crossing a common, both saw a light. Crouch exclaimed, "Did you hear that cry?" "No," replied Mr. Rose. "Oh," said the fatalist, "it was the cry of a child, the name of which he gave. In a few days, the child breathed its last." Upon another occasion, he predicted the death of a man named McIntyre. Colonel Hurd, of Burritt's Rapids, informs us that he knew Crouch, and that far and wide he was regarded with terror by the children, who had learned from their parents his supposed power of communing with the spirits of the departed. End quote.
Yeah.
In another place, it stated that he predicted his own death.
I would hate to have any of that.
Yeah.
What a curse. I don't. Oh, that sounds awful.
The Rideau Canal is still used today between May and October each year for pleasure boating, thanks to Parks Canada.
Pleasure boating.
It's also one of Canada's most picturesque landmarks. Most of the locks are still hand operated.
Hand operated, like crank?
Like crank, yep.
No.
It's like a big wheel.
Wow. They really did not want to spend that $1 billion, let me tell you.
There are 23 stations along the canal, as well as 2 locks at the entrance to the Tay Canal. A UNESCO World Heritage Site, Rideau Canal is the oldest continuously operated canal system in North America.
That's cool.
And that's the Rideau Canal.
Insane.
And there are several other stories on like some of the links that you can read.
Oh, I'm sure.
There were a bunch that just didn't have a whole lot.
But yeah, like anything with buildings made of lime next to a canal.
Shit's haunted as fuck.
Sorry, you're super haunted. Sorry about it.
We wouldn't be here without support from listeners like you. If you're interested in supporting us financially, you can leave a one-time or monthly donation over on Buy Me a Coffee or our Venmo page. Links are in the show notes. And we make a point of reaching out to send you a thank you note and stickers to show our appreciation.
Want to show your support in a more concrete way? Pick up some Yield Crime merch over at our TeePublic shop. We shout out whenever there is a sale each month, and we work to make sure we're creating new designs and changing it up whenever possible. And hey, thanks for listening.
Do you love true crime and travel? Having traveled the world solo the last couple of years and being obsessed with true crime, I found myself researching others who took the same vacations but never made it home. The Last Trip is a true crime podcast covering missing and murdered people that were living their best lives on vacation. I'm your host, Jamie Beebe, and each week I'll bring you on The Last Trip, taking a deep dive into vacation culture and travel spots, tips on staying alive while traveling, and ultimately recreating someone's last days in paradise. What led to their last trip? What are the hard facts? What is the final outcome? And could you be next? David Snedden was a 24-year-old college student from Utah attending Mandarin classes in Beijing when he mysteriously disappeared while hiking Tiger Leaping Gorge. Chinese authorities said he drowned in the gorge, and U.S. authorities agreed, although his body was never found and his parents didn't believe that. 7 years later, out of the blue, they got a phone call from a former U.S. official who had evidence David is still alive. This case sounds like a Hollywood movie, but evidence doesn't lie. So where is David Snedden? Famous rugby player and Celebrity X Factor contestant Levi Davis went missing in Barcelona last year while on a backpacking trip through Europe. Just days before he vanished, he posted a 15-minute video to his Instagram account saying his life was in danger and people were after him. After he disappeared, several theories emerged. But what really happened to Levi Davis? Join me, Jamie Beebe, co-host of the popular true crime series Strictly Stalking, as I embark on a brand new adventure combining true crime and travel. Listen to The Last Trip wherever you get your podcasts.
And this week's podcast plug is The Last Trip podcast. The Last Trip is a true crime podcast exclusively investigating missing and murdered victims that were living their best lives on vacation. Jamie Beebe, co-host of the popular true crime podcast Strictly Stalking, brings together the two things she's most passionate about, true crime and travel. Through her own solo travels around the world, she has a unique perspective on staying alive in paradise. Join Jamie as she recreates someone's last days in paradise on The Last Trip. And we will have a link to her show in the show notes.
Crazy.
And this week's listener question comes from Carrie Ann.
Hi, Carrie.
And she would like to know, what crisps or chips to us Americans would you choose if it is the only one you are allowed to eat?
Lay's Stacks Original.
Okay.
I feel like those are the only ones that I can like confidently go back to. Mm-hmm. In many different scenarios, because you can really jazz that chip up with whatever you're dipping.
That's a good point.
You know, like it's just a good dip vessel because it's like a stronger Pringle essentially. So I choose it for its usability.
I would probably do Stacy's pita chips, like the traditional ones, because like you said, you can use them for a variety of dips. I love me a good pita chip.
Yeah, good vessel.
It is a good vessel.
Because a potato is a potato, you know? Like, I like having the crunch, but also just like the salt. So I can kind of do whatever I want for the rest of it.
Yep. And if you would like to send us a question to be answered on the show, feel free to slide into our DMs, or you can email us at yieldcrimepodcast@gmail.com. Want to be social with us? You can see pics from this week's episode, bonus content, and funny memes on X at yieldcrimepod, or on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and YouTube at Ye Olde Crime Podcast.
Speaking of YouTube, we have a special playlist just for our Can You Crack the Cramp Word segments with our guest podcasters to see who can correctly guess the meaning of some obscure Victorian slang terms. If that's your thing, check it out.
And on that note, what's something good you'd like to share?
Oh man. I'm trying to think of something. I'm sick right now, so...
Your operating system is a little delayed?
Yeah. Like, my something good is I haven't started the cough yet. Maybe my something good is something I'm waiting for. Yeah, it's hard. My partner and I are sick at the same time, and normally that's not the case. But I got hit pretty shortly after he did. So
I hate that.
We've just been useless, and I feel so bad for the dogs because Willie and Chief are like going out into the living room and fighting to play to get some wiggles out, and then they come back and they cuddle with us.
Mm-hmm.
And Willie's been cuddling. That's my good thing. Willie's been cuddling me while I've been sleeping.
Nice. He's a good cuddler.
He is a good cuddler. He tries to pretend he hates it. Like
he doesn't hate it.
Like he's doing it for you.
Mm-hmm.
But he loves being the little spoon. He's such a good little spoon.
He is.
What about you? What's one good thing?
So I treated myself to something to like celebrate getting a job.
Yeah.
And it was perfect timing because something that I've been wanting to get forever became available again. So I bought myself a Mothman Build-A-Bear.
Oh, so cute. I like him.
He's super cute.
Very nice.
So I'm very happy.
Oh, you should take a screenshot of that because that's really sweet.
He's very cute. Side note, my boss has no idea who Mothman is, and he doesn't know what cryptids are. And I was like, okay, all right.
He's not a Minnesotan then.
Minnesotans
know what cryptids are at the
He is
very
Minnesotan and he does not know. So I'm going to have to educate him because what?
Yeah, what?
All right. Shall we?
We shall.
We love to hear from you, and there's a couple of ways you can reach out to us. You can email us at yeoldecrimepodcast@gmail.com, where you can send us story ideas, share any spooky stories you may have, fun gifts, or even just to say hello.
You can also reach out to us via snail mail. Remember mail? Our mailing address is Ye Olde Crime Podcast, P.O. Box 341, Wyoming, Minnesota 55092. Fun fact, we like to send out thank you cards with fun stickers you can't get at our shop, so it's worth the cost of a stamp.
And on that note, as always, I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Madison.
And we'll see you next time with another tale
I know this crime.